meeting to order, please. Call the meeting to order, please. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. Present are Tim Keeney and Tim Petrikis and myself as Selectmen.
Speak right in. You gotta speak right into the mic.
Present are Tim Keeney and Tim Petrikis and myself, Bud Noy, the first Selectman. An honored guest, thank you for coming. We hope to have a lively discussion. I'd like now to turn this over to Tim Petrikis.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Petrikis, and I started all this mess. But I'll start out by saying it is really good to see people out for a couple of reasons. Obviously, with the advent of some of the restrictions being released, we can get together in person again and have a meeting like this. That's a great thing. But also, we have fewer than 300 people come out to vote for the referendum. So it's good to see some spirited discussion about our local politics, our local processes, and that's what we're here to do tonight. So real briefly, we were originally going to limit the public Q&A to about 50 minutes. My intent originally was to start this at 5, run it for an hour so we could do our Board of Selectmen meeting. After 9 hours of going back and forth, we decided to open it up. So, as long as people are asking questions, we're going to stay here. So hang on for that. We are going to ask people to limit your questions to about 3 minutes. Kim LaFleur will be keeping time and let us know when we're running long. She's going to try to keep my answers brief as well. We will be able to respond to questions. Sometimes we have these public hearing sessions and we can't respond. Tonight is designed for you to ask questions and get a response. I'm going to try to keep my responses short. If there's something that you don't feel I answered it full or didn't answer to your satisfaction, the last slide I'll have up here tonight has my email address, my home phone, and instructions on a Zoom meeting that I'll host on Monday night. Any questions we have to defer because we don't have answers, we'll respond to via email. Certainly we'll take comments, but it's really designed as a Q&A. We've asked the speakers to sign in at the entrance to the hall with your name and your address, and we want to keep the evening respectful. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Selectman Tim Keeney, who's got a brief opening statement he'd like to make. Mr. Keeney.
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. So I appreciate the fact that public comment is being permitted today. However, the proper procedure would have been to welcome public comment prior to the 4 motions passed by the Board of Selectmen this past Thursday, May 20th, which were made without any notice to me or to the public, and when all 3 selectmen were not present. And I encourage you all to speak tonight individually, even if someone else has made the same points you have, because it's important to know that these points are believed to be by more than one person. My primary concerns about the motions introduced by Selectman Petrikis on May 20th are the fundamental changes to town government without any public input and without being reviewed by a charter revision commission and gaining their support, and without a referendum vote here in the town of Somers. The first motion that, are you going to go over these motions, by the way?
I wasn't planning on it, but you can.
Okay. Yeah. So again, I thought that Selectman Petrikis was going to review the motions, but the first motion is to eliminate the position of Chief Financial Officer. And the position of Chief Financial Officer is mentioned in the Charter, Section 5-20, where it states the Treasurer shall act as the Director of Finance and the Chief Financial Officer of the town. You cannot eliminate a position like the Chief Financial Officer without a charter change. Second point I want to make is that the first Selectman's salary change is certainly within the purview of the Board of Selectmen, but may require concurrence by the Board of Finance. Creating a new position is also within the purview of the Board of Selectmen, as long as the functions of the position do not impinge on any position in the charter. Now, the charter of our town states that the first selectman shall be the chief executive officer and administrative officer of the town. In this case, primary duties of the first selectman are being given to the COO that are current duties of the first selectman. Now, one of the problems is, in saying that, it's very difficult because the duties have yet to be defined. In fact, the plan is to appoint Mr. Marinaccio in the position of Chief Operating Officer on 1 July, and then have the position definition figured out by the 1st of October. So he's going to be serving in that position for 3 months, and we're not even really sure what it is. Also, another point I wanted to make is by giving the Chief Financial Officer additional duties yet to be determined, the charter actually spells out the method for selection, because what you're doing here is you're just taking the Chief Financial Officer and adding additional duties to that person and calling that person the Chief Operational Officer. Now, the charter does spell out how that is to be determined under the section that talks about the treasurer, where it requires a panel of 3 people, says how they're to be determined, and nowhere is there any authorization for a 3-year job contract. So that's something that I object to. And how do you create a position and put someone in it without any understanding of what the elements of the job are? State statute also states that you can't create a contract without an appropriation to support it. That's something that obviously will be of great concern to the Board of Finance, but I would not want any actions by the Board of Selectmen to be violating a state statute. And also, there's a state statute which basically implies that whatever is created by a Board of Selectmen should be able to be undone by the next Board of Selectmen. Now, if we have a 3-year contract at, say, $140,000 a year, plus a cost of benefits is another 50 or 60% added on, the cost of that contract is well over $500,000. And if it's a 3-year contract, in order to dismiss that person, it may cost the town $500,000 to get rid of that person if they think that's the best thing for the town to do. So that's just something to remember. I'd like everyone to remember that. And also, another point I want to make is that transfers from, say, the first selectman's budget to the CFO budget need to be approved by the Board of Finance. And if it's greater than $20,000, in this case we're talking about a salary increase in excess of $30,000, there must be a town meeting to approve it. Those are my opening comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keeney. So, when I put this together, I just wanted to spend just a few minutes of kind of going over what I went to Carl Landolita for to get guidance on before I brought it forward. That there would be no change to the form of government. Specifically, the residents are still going to elect a Board of Selectmen, a Board of Finance, a Town Clerk, Board of Education, among others. Residents are still going to vote on the budget referendum. Matters of governance under charter and state statute remain with the elected boards, but matters of day-to-day operations will be the primary duties of the COO. The job descriptions and salaries are defined over the next few months. I wanted to put together a committee to take a look at a couple of things. What should the job duties in Town Hall be relegated to give us more effective government, so that residents who might have a concern have someone to go to and an elected official who has the capacity to go and work with Town Hall staff without calling a special meeting and get things done sooner. It does establish an employment contract through June 30, 2024, as Mr. Keeney said, but I did put in there establish a salary not to exceed a defined maximum. And I based that on a survey that was done by the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities gives you a range of what someone in this role would make, but without a job description, it's hard to actually pin that down, so that's what the committee would be done, would be to do. Thank you. I'll be here all night, try to be able to do it. So what's the impact of the budget to the town of Somers? Well, we'd have employees, we'd have appointed, we'd have elected officials. So the COO is a new role, the CFO role is eliminated, as Tim said. Unless otherwise provided for under the charter, the treasurer duties would remain with the COO. So we're not eliminating the treasurer, we're just putting it under a different title. There's no other new roles created, either part-time or full-time. And the first selectman and board of selectmen's governance duties under charter and state statute remain unchanged. This is not finance stuff, this is my work, this little spreadsheet you see here. We have a pot of money that's been approved in this year's fiscal budget of roughly $290,000 for salaries. And what I wanted to do is allocate that out without adding more staff, and you can see the numbers, and these will be posted online afterwards. The savings to the town is around $21,000 the first year. This was not designed to be a cost-saving thing, it was designed to get the work shared a little bit differently so that we could deliver residents better services quicker. So with that, we're going to go to the Q&A. Kim, is there a list of people? You want to invite people up front one by one? Thanks.
Yeah, Ed Cash is the first.
Bud, can I have that microphone, please? Mr. Cash. Oh, there's one there.
I got it, yeah. Ed Cash, Shady Glen Lane. I've been a 50-year resident here in town. And why Selectman Patricus? Were you contacting the town attorney before this issue came up? You knew the day before the May 20th meeting that Selectman Keeney would not be attending. You still added this issue to the agenda. You didn't inform the first selectman, according to yourself, until shortly before the meeting started on May 20th. Who are you, anyways? But why did you allow this important issue be approved and added to the meeting on May 20th on such a short notice? Looks premeditated to me. Selectman Patricus stated in the newspaper, you both approved the chief operating officer before the advisory committee or job description was established. Sounds like the cart before the horse to me. Something has gone seriously wrong in Somers. Where's the common sense, which you don't have any? Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Why should you use that much? You can't do this. You sound like a talking or a box of peanuts.
Is this any better?
No.
Hold the mic away from your mouth a little more.
How's that?
That's better.
That's better? Okay, thank you. All right, so if I skip over any, remind me, okay? So why did I reach out to the town attorney a week prior? That was your first question, right?
Yeah.
So
Let them talk, people.
yes. So when I got elected, you elected me with a bunch of baggage from experience, from work, from home, from 8 years on board of ed, for 3 years on board of selectmen. And what I found is the town can run rampant with rumors. So the reason that I reached out to Carl before I brought it to anybody else was this was something I've been working on for several years. I think we do a disservice to our town. I've lived here for 35 years. I will say for 35 years it's been hard to find a population in this town that fully supports their board, ever. That's just systemic to the system that we have. So my goal here was to figure out how do we serve the residents better while still respecting what I think was the outcome of the referendum a few years ago, where the town said we don't want to change our form of government. So how do we keep a board of selectmen and serve our residents better? So I wrote to Carl, I said, can I make these 4 motions? Is it legal? Can I put them in under the opportunity to add and delete agenda items? Because my concern was, if we put it out there, rumors are going to go around just like they did 4 or 5 years ago that I'm trying to get a friend of mine hired into this job of town manager. So rumors run rampant. I had never talked to Mike about this role before the meeting on Thursday the 20th. I didn't want people running up and down the rows of town hall going, Tim wants to make Mike the chief operating officer, without having a chance at a public meeting to say, Mike, I'd like you to consider this position. So that's why I did that. As far as the question about, job description and salary, I know from my experience at Town Hall what administrative duties exist to make sure we handle personnel issues, community questions, labor issues, all those things that we do from an operational standpoint, that it is very hard to elect effective management. It's not hard to elect effective leadership, but it's hard to elect operational management because it's getting more and more difficult to run a municipality in Connecticut these days. We were hit in the past few years with, should we or should we not become part of a health district? What are we gonna do in 6 or 8 years when the state says we have to close our transfer station? These are things that need governance from an elected body so we can get the pulse of the community, but it needs operational excellence from people who know how to go and find grant money, work with other compatriots around the state that do this job, and work in a professional level to make sure we deliver those services under the guidelines of a municipality. So 2 years ago, I did the same thing in business. I had to reorganize a 200-person national sales team. Not any much more fun than this, but something that had to be done to make the company survive. So what I'm trying to do is figure out, how do I leave this community in a better condition than the one I walked into 35 years ago? Were there other questions that you had that I missed?
I got a few comments I'd like to make with
Later.
regards to that.
I want to get the community first, Tim. Thank you.
No, it relates to that very question that was raised.
Yeah, let's hear from Tim. Okay.
Does that microphone work? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. First of all, Selectman Patrikas, you talked about getting guidance from the town attorney. The problem is the town attorney is very careful in answering questions. Number one, he does not answer policy questions about town government. However, he does answer legal questions. And the question that he was asked was, do these motions on their face violate the charter? The problem is, you have no idea what the duties of the chief operating officer are. You only know that he's gonna be paid 6 times what the first selectman's gonna be paid. And the first selectman, again, according to the charter, is supposed to be the chief executive officer and the chief administrative officer. And in the comments being presented today, it talks about the first selectman, the duties of the first selectman will be, in the interim, transferred to the chief operating officer. That alone infers that some of the duties of the first selectman are being given to the chief operating officer, and therefore, the chief operating officer is also supposed to be running town affairs during the day. I believe that currently is the job of the first selectman as the chief administrative officer. We also hear that the job is too complex. The job needs a professional to do it. I think you can elect a professional to do that. Thank you.
Next is Dan Thayer.
I think this gentleman got all the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, which other?
Why May 20th? When you knew that Selectman Keeney was not going to be there, why couldn't you put it off to the next meeting? Answer up.
Because I want.
It sounds premeditated. You couldn't have got it through if Selectman Keeney was here.
Because
What was the rush?
I had specifically asked the town attorney if I could bring them up at the next meeting. I had planned to bring them out so that we could get the dialogue started, because as you see, I want to get things started on the first. That was my decision.
It was premeditated.
Listen. I was not the one who had a priority other than town hall for Thursday night at 6 p.m. Okay. Brian?
Dan Thayer was up next.
My name's Dan Thayer, 10 Colton Road, Summers. I don't know, or really have an opinion about what the best form of government is for this town, but I think the voters as a group do. I don't know if it was illegal or not for you to do what you did, but it sure looks wrong. I really have to question why any public group or form of government that is required to post notices of meetings and post agendas permits a rule that allows people at the last minute, unpublicized, to put anything on the agenda short of an emergency. Even if it's illegal, even if it's legal under state statute. I think that you need to adopt a rule from this moment forward that you will no longer bring anything onto the agenda that is not an emergency. Had you had a rule like that, we wouldn't be here this evening. I think that it may be the right thing to do, but it sure as heck was the wrong way to do it, guys. And in a way, you should be ashamed that you didn't think forward far enough, regardless of your good intentions. Because we all know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that being the case, I would urge you to step back, rescind if you can, and then go forward in a different way if this is really necessary. Thank you.
I thank you very much for that comment. That was very well stated. Thank you. Brian.
James Radowitz.
I, like most people, I grew up in this town. It's always been selectmen. The town has been run by selectmen. The selectmen, who were the first selectmen, always made good choices. Now you're telling me that it's getting that complicated that we cannot elect a person to do the job? What you did should have went to the people. The people have the say in town. The people should have the say of what they want for a government in this town. What you did may have been legal, it wasn't ethical. Not ethical at all. You guys ought to be ashamed of yourself. At midnight, behind the door. You want this? Let's have a referendum on it, and let the people vote what they want to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Can you address that issue about a referendum, please?
About a referendum?
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely think we should have one. There's a process of doing a referendum. I absolutely think the town needs to go through that process.
So are you
Absolutely.
saying that we're gonna do that before we continue this process?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we need to do a referendum process.
No, it won't work.
There's two different things, right? So we're open to other motions. This is one guy's idea, okay? I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm telling you that for 35 years I've seen angst and consternation.
That's the wrong word.
Yeah, right? It's an option. If you look at the email that I sent to Carl Landolina, I said I don't expect it to be done in one meeting, okay? Yes, there needs to be a referendum in town to address this and other things. I would be committed to helping that get done.
To approve this.
Not to approve, this is already approved. If we put a motion on that does something else, certainly consider it, but the town needs a referendum on charter revision.
Should have been a referendum prior to this
You
meeting.
had
Thank
a
you.
referendum on this a couple of years ago, and it
We,
didn't pass.
we've got someone else scheduled to ask a question. Brian?
Next is Steve Krasinski.
Throwing it out there.
Steve Krasinski, 55 Wells Road, Summers. Let's see, 2 years ago, Bud, you and Jim voted to have a referendum for administrator. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. In the end, that referendum passed. Now, here you are 2 years later saying, to hell with the referendum, we don't need it anymore. Me, the selectmen, can do what I want to do and go ahead by two-person vote and change the government. 2 years ago, when your opinion was here, you just switched 180 degrees. 2 years ago also, after the referendum, because you misworded the referendum, it got called and ended up being in question. So that was another mistake you two made. Both of you were on the board. You then came back and says, oh, wait a minute, we can negate that referendum because we didn't warn the meeting. But it was the town clerk's fault we didn't warn the meeting, not my fault. You are the chief judge. You are the buck stops here. It was your fault and your fault. Board of Selectmen. Don't blame it on the town clerk. Now you're changing the whole thing around, okay? Something is screwed up here. Now, let me make another point. Tim, in the paper you said, if a resident asks for help solving a problem, can't do anything until the next selectmen's meeting. You know something? That is the job of the first selectman. That's why we pay him $90,000 to work 5 days a week to solve these problems for you people. Okay? That's what we need him for. If you're not there doing the job, then get out of there and let somebody else do the job. Okay. What the Lord said, he wasn't aware that the Poitras was going to propose the new COO position until shortly before the meeting. I watched you on the film. He read every minute. You just sat there. You never saw the paper in front of you. You just sat there and nodded your head. You knew about it before he read it. You knew about it a week before he did it. And you had to be part of the arrangement to go ahead and put this whole package together without notice to the people. I have no problem if you're going to go through a referendum. My recommendation is stop what you're doing, put it through a referendum, and see where it goes. Not a vote of you two people. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Brian?
I got Bob Garlick.
Well, I wasn't planning on speaking today, so I didn't come prepared with a lot of notes. But just, first of all, my name is Bob Garlick, and I live on Juniper Hill Drive, and I've been here since '93, and I love this town. I guess some of the questions I have, and I'm in business, and I've been in business all my life, is I'd like to have someone discuss the interview process. How many candidates were interviewed for this? I just heard something just blew me away. We hired a person, and we don't have the criteria for his job? That does not happen in the private sector. And my other question, okay, the current CFO position, is he under a 3-year contract? Okay, so why would we put anybody under a 3-year contract? The gentleman may be well qualified, I don't know, okay? But if he's not, we're stuck, okay? So I really think we ought to really reconsider the process, and we ought to give it back to the town to make the decisions and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'd be happy to address a couple of those questions. If I leave any out, ask again, because you had a few. If anybody's been watching town politics, they know that Mike and I don't get along every other Thursday. We've had our differences of execution, of process, of question and answer. And one of the things I was wrestling with as I was putting this together is in my head is how do we fill this position? Because I have a general idea of the duties that are going to be needed for this role. I have a general idea of what duties are under the statute and charter. Okay, so that's off on the drawing board. What really tipped the scale for me was two things. When we were discussing Mr. Marinaccia's reappointment at the treasurer level, there was a discussion one week, and I recall that I said, I'm not familiar with that part of the charter. Can we put this off a couple weeks? We put it off a couple weeks. In that time period, I got a call from one of the folks on one of the other boards. He said, well, we'd really like you to put Mike through the process that's called for by the charter, that calls for a member of the Board of Selectmen, member of the Board of Finance, a member of the community to get together and appoint a treasurer. So I believe it was the next meeting, Tim, you and I and Bud voted on that. We sent Mike through the process, and the recommendation came back from the Board of Finance All three unanimous recommending Mike for reappointment of his term as treasurer for 2 years. The three of us voted that through. And in that document, it was publicly stated that Mr. Knorr is not gonna run for first selectman. And there was a concern at the town that if we didn't reappoint Mike for 2 years, there'd be this failure of continuity of governance. So that's the one that tipped the scale for me that said, I've got a guy that understands the town, he's been here a long time, our audits have been stellar, his reviews have all been 5 out of 5, he's competent, that's the guy I've gotta get if I've got a $290,000 pot to work with. So that's why I put it out there a couple of weeks ago. That's how I came to that conclusion. So thank you.
You didn't answer one of my questions,
Go ahead.
okay? How many candidates did you interview for this position?
I didn't interview anyone.
Okay, so here's an important position, it's gonna be running our finance of the town, and you didn't interview the best qualified candidates. Okay, you're in business, you ran 200 people, okay? That does not happen in the private sector. The board owes it to the town, if we're going forward, to have a selection process and interview other candidates. Hell, I'd love to be the only person interviewing for a job, okay? That doesn't work, so that's one thing you didn't answer.
So let me answer that one if I may, okay? I heard this and I thought it was a cliche the first year I was running for the board, because I was gonna go to the Board of Education with all my business experience, and I was told, town runs different than business. I didn't believe it then, I believe it now, it is slightly different. But, what we have in the candidate that I saw was competency to do those things that I perceived we're gonna need in the job description. The reason I didn't wanna ferret all that out was so that we could get dialogue going on what needs to be in the job description, how does it get weighted, how does it get paid, and then what duties can we shelve off of the first selectman and set it on. So that's how I came to that decision.
Again, I don't agree with that. You have to interview other candidates if we're going through with this position, okay? The other thing you didn't answer, why are we giving anybody a guaranteed 3-year contract? Again, any candidate could interview great, they could be on paper well, and then they could be horrible. Then we're stuck for a lot of money. I don't agree with that 3-year contract at all.
With Mike, there's a little bit of safety. We know what his performance has been. We know what his performance has been. We do have a 3-year contract in town with the superintendent of schools, and that's what I modeled it after. So that was just some rationale that I had when I threw this up there about, that's all. Brian?
Next is Bill Meyer.
We'll answer your question. I've just got a couple of comments to make,
I'm gonna let Bill speak first, please.
With regards to the last question and your comments.
Let's hear what Tim has to say.
I would like to make some comments based on what you just said, Selectman Patricus, because I think it's important for people to hear someone else's view besides your own, and you seem to have your own ideas of what government is best for Summers. Okay, so just a couple of things. Hold up. Okay, first of all, the panel to review Mike Marinaccio's performance was hand-picked, meaning the outcome was determined before the panel even sat down to consider it. You talk about continuity of government and how important that is in your mind, continuity of government. And continuity of government to you means, oh my God, if we lose some of the people that we currently have in place, what is the town gonna do? My answer to that is continuity of government is the problem. More of the same. We need change. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Meyer. I'm a member of the Board of Finance. Before I start my comments, I'll first say, as a member of the Board of Finance, who, the board clearly has jurisdiction over this matter. This was not brought to the Board of Finance in advance. I've spoken to the other board members. None of us had any knowledge this was coming forward, and we have not approved it. So we are meeting Tuesday night. I encourage anyone to please attend, and I anticipate another robust discussion. And I certainly will have a list of questions at that meeting regarding this proposal, its legality, and its proposed implementation, as well as the process. But what I would say tonight is what Summers really needs is we need leadership. We don't need loopholes. Leadership is hard work. An open and transparent government is the cornerstone of our democracy. Restructuring and changing our form of government in 10 minutes in secrecy is not good government. And the proper way to change our government is through leadership and not through secrecy. Leadership entails collaboration with other boards, hearing from our residents, hearing from our staff, gathering ideas, building consensus, getting buy-in. That's the hard work of leadership. Two individuals working together, using loopholes as their justification, that's not a bipartisan effort. Simply put, it's a self-motivated power grab. And frankly, it's government at its worst. A true bipartisan effort would involve our entire community. It'd be open and transparent. I would support a public dialogue and open to the idea of making thoughtful changes to our government that will benefit everyone in Summers. We must have a process that allows people to be heard and share their thoughts and ideas. We must have town leaders across the Board of Selectmen, across the Board of Finance, and across the Board of Education working together to effectively lead our community. As elected officials, you're here to represent the people. We're not here to represent our individual self-interests and loopholes. And these loopholes are about self-interest. We need leaders willing to do hard work to arrive at an outcome that's best for everyone, and not just a few individuals. It's good government, and the people of Summers deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Next is Ava Brown.
Good evening.
I think.
Eva Brown, Watchdog Road, Summers.
Can't hear you.
Tilt it down. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, first, I wanted to address that it's my understanding that that Mr. Petroikis said that you wanted to quell any rumors, although there were none, so you approached the town attorney. Is that correct?
I wanted to stem rumors, that's correct.
Right. So then it appears to me that any of the selectmen can go to the town attorney for any matter, and the town attorney bills the town, who is paid by the taxpayers. Is that correct?
I don't know how the town attorney bills. I'm sure he's on a retainer and bills us for the effort, but this was...
You probably should know.
Why don't you know?
So the reason I reached out to him, because I did question whether what I was proposing would be legal as it relates to my understanding of the charter and state statute, and could I present it in the format? So that's why.
Okay, so any selectman can approach the town attorney at any time. There's no rule that the selectman has.
Well, it has to be
That's
related
correct.
to town business.
Okay, that was my first question. And then I just want to say, in my legal opinion, I think you violated the town charter. And personally, I think Mr. Knorr and Mr. Petroikis should resign.
I got Tom Skypack.
Good evening, guys. Appreciate you letting me take the time here to talk. Extremely disappointed in what happened on May 20th here.
Can you tilt the mic up just a bit?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Good. Yeah. So very disappointed with what happened on May 20th. It just doesn't pass the sniff test, guys. Right? That's the thing. Like we're trying to raise our kids, right? Like sometimes something is right by the letter of the law, but you still don't do it, right? Because you got to get people on board, you got to get input, that kind of thing. So really disappointed. The other thing I wanted to bring up too is the town lawyer has been kind of at the center of a couple of different, you know, debacles here. This one, you know, it might, again, be in the spirit of the letter of the law. I don't think it is. I think it violates the town charter, as Mrs. Brown just mentioned. But again, we're paying this guy for his counsel, right? Which extends beyond what the letter of the law is. And we're paying for his counsel and his wisdom. And we're not getting it. The other time we didn't get it was a couple years ago when we had the charter language that nobody could understand, right? I had to review that with my wife for maybe an hour, 60 minutes. I mean, we're not dumb people, right? We had to actually mark it up to figure out what it meant. Now, we're paying this guy. Is he here to answer questions tonight?
He's not, as far as I can see.
Okay, so my suggestion would be that we rectify this immediately, vote to reverse what was done on May 20th.
Thank you.
William Shapiro.
William Shapiro. No, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Gary Shizzle.
Gary Shizzle, 26 Harvest Hill Road Drive, whatever. Doesn't matter. First of all, this may not be a favorable position to be in, but I'm actually in favor of a COO/town manager, and I have been for some time. However, the problem is that this position needs to be opened up for other people, okay? 6 years ago, when I stepped down as fire chief, we hired a fire chief. We didn't go in and go, you. We went in and said, okay, put it out there. 20 people applied, all right? And we wheedled it down to that one person that made sense, that was the best person for the job. And that's what I have a problem with this process. That's what we have to change, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Pat, B-A-N-A-C-H, Banash. I don't want to hammer the name.
Panic.
Panic, I'm sorry. I tried my best to not hammer your name.
Good evening, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A little bit more. Sorry, I'm going to a baby shower with an unvaccinated person. I can't take a chance.
If you can't hear her question, I'll be happy to repeat it. So,
I'll pull it down for this.
thank you.
Right.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes. All right, so, my name is Pat Bannock. I live on Green Tree Lane. I've been a resident of this town for 38 years. I am an unaffiliated voter. I don't care what party you belong to. I would like to reiterate what some of the other speakers have said. Just because something is legal does not make it ethical. And I object to the way this was done. I freely admit that I have not been active watching what you're doing most of the time because I trust you. I felt the town was reasonably well run, and then I find out that a very important issue is put on the agenda as an addition, not published in advance, and is voted on at the same meeting by 2 people. I don't believe this is correct, and if it is correct, we should change the process so it can never be done again. And other speakers have spoken about what's done in business. I've worked in the public sector for my whole career, over 40 years. And in the places that I've been where collective decisions were made, it was a policy that nothing was voted on in the same meeting at which it was added to the agenda. It was added to the agenda, people had a chance to discuss it, and it was voted on at the next meeting. And if there wasn't enough time to discuss it, it was delayed until a subsequent meeting. This is too big of a change to be making a decision at a meeting where it's not even published. So I really object to the process as much as I object to the decision. In regard to the decision, I'm willing to accept the will of the people if the people have a chance to express their opinions. But personally, I don't think cutting the first selectman's salary down to 25% basically of what it currently is, which says to me that the first selectman will now work possibly 10 hours a week. If that, I don't think this job of guiding the town, even with a chief operating officer doing the heavy lifting, I expect the first selectman and the selectmen to make decisions based on knowledge. And I don't know how you get knowledge of the issues in this town if you're only giving 10 hours a week to it. I just think this town deserves more than that. So I object mostly to the process. And as I look around, it strikes me that I don't really feel like we have representative government. I think maybe, and this isn't my idea, but I think if we're going to talk about the charter, maybe we should add a couple of more positions to the selectmen so it could look more representative than it looks to me. So, and, you know, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I really think we need to do things differently. And I do agree with a lot of the things that Selectman Keeney expressed, but I will ask you, Selectman Keeney, why could you not attend that meeting? What was more important than being there? Maybe you could have listened to
Can I answer that question? Thank you. Appreciate the question. This is the first meeting of more than 40 straight meetings that I did not make. The only meeting I didn't make. The reason I wasn't there was because Hillsdale, which you may or may not support, but whether you like it or not, Hillsdale was having their first major event. And because I had assisted them several years ago, I had been invited and I thought it was important for me to be there.
If you weren't there, none of us would be here.
Well, that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true.
I understand that two people out of three could vote this, and your vote probably wouldn't have made any difference. However, I don't think Hillsdale is more important than the town of Summers.
Again, that was the first meeting in 40 that I missed. My record is pretty good, let me tell you.
Okay.
What is the record of the other selectmen in the meeting? Have they made 40 straight? I'd like to have that answer.
So I would like to thank you for those comments. Believe it or not, we're not far off. And to Mr. Garlick's comments earlier, charter revision could help expand the board to 5. As I said when we started this meeting, the fact that we have fewer than 300 people come out to a budget referendum is appalling to me as somebody who works hard to put that together and bring it forward. It's good to see this much passion in town, but please step forward and fill a role we've got on any of our volunteer commissions, run for one of the offices we have open, take my seat. Whatever you got to do to lead this town to a better place, I'm all for. So thank you for your comments.
Brian? Ed Fedorowicz?
My name's Ed Fedorowicz. I live at 232 Stafford Road. I've been a resident of Summers for almost 50 years. Mr. Nora, when did you know about this proposal?
Sorry, the folks can't hear you in the back. If you could pull the microphone up closer. Thank you.
Mr. Nora, when did you know about this proposal?
Selectman Tim Patricus advised me of that about a week before.
So you knew about it a week before. Did you discuss it with him? What it entailed?
No, he basically forwarded the motions to me.
I'm sorry?
He basically forwarded the motions to me, which I read in advance, yes.
Okay. Did you discuss that with him?
I did not discuss it with him. It was his presentation. I just had the time to review it, that's it.
So, but the two of you knew about it ahead of time, right?
That's correct.
And doesn't that make a illegal meeting between two board members when you're not on a posted agenda?
I would say no. I mean, it's not different. I mean, it looks bad, right? But, for example, we get the warrant for what needs to be paid prior to a meeting. As long as we don't discuss it, it is information prior to a meeting that we can share with each other. It happens every week.
Did you share that with Mr. Keeney?
I did not. I usually send stuff to Mr. Knorr. That's what I do.
So the two of you had a little.
Why wasn't it on the agenda?
That was my request of Carl Landolina to see if we could bring it up under other items, so as not to get rumors going.
Especially because we can advance the news.
Yep. I'll address that question, okay? We often get questions about freedom of information and what we can and what we can't share, what we can and what we can't discuss. I'll tell you, the Tuesday prior to the Hillsdale meeting that Mr. Keeney was at, I got a call from someone else on that committee to invite me to a breakfast on Friday morning at Joanna's with the folks from Hillsdale to learn about next steps. My first question was, is Selectman Keeney going to be there? The gentleman said, yes, he is. I said, then I can't attend because the last thing you need is the appearance of an illegal meeting if you guys are going to be talking about Hillsdale's contributions to Summers and be sitting there. That's different than being, so I knew that there was going to be a meeting about Hillsdale on Friday morning. I did not get into a discussion with anybody about it. I know. The same as getting information to town hall on what's coming up on the agenda.
So then you just deflected. That's what you just did right now. You just deflected. Please answer this gentleman's question more clearly.
My opinion is that the two of you held a illegal secret meeting, and that anything forthcoming from that meeting should be null and void.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sarah Bollinger?
Can you hear me? So I have in my possession the email that I requested some FOIA information, as you know. And, Mr. Knorr, you said you had no correspondence related to this.
Guys, quit talking in the back.
Mr. Knorr's email says he has no correspondence related to this other than the motions made by Mr. Patrikas at the meeting of May 30th. What you just said is you have correspondence from previously.
No, I was referring to the motions that he forwarded on to me.
That's correspondence. In addition to that, I just want to say, I served with Tim for a few years on the Board of Ed, and one thing I can tell you is he is extremely thorough and does a lot of research, and I have always respected that, and so I appreciate tonight when you said you have been working on this for years. And I'm not against even the concept of it. I have worked for different municipalities like Towland and Enfield that have, a board of selectmen and a town manager type position. It's the process or lack thereof that took place that does not sit well with anybody. I definitely concur with everyone else that you should rescind the motions and forward it to a referendum first. The referendum that was given 2 years ago was so poorly worded. I spoke to the town hall prior to it going out, and it never got changed. It was really kind of sad to see that, because I think we could have done better for the town if it was clear and we could have been in a much different position. I guess I have a couple other comments. Let's just see here. There is something called, Incompatible Offices. I won't bore the people with it, but basically it says you can't leave the fox in charge of the hen house. And I don't think that you can have the treasurer/finance director in charge of the day-to-day operations of this town. And I would highly recommend you don't. one thing I have a hard time believing is that what I just started with is there was no correspondence with you, no correspondence with Tim about any of this that I know you've worked on for years. So it's a lot of hard work that you've done, doing a lot of research, and I agree with it, but not in this process, you know. Needs to be a town referendum, it needs to be worded properly so people understand what they're voting for. You know, to give someone a raise, a 30% raise as of July 1st, and they don't even know what their job responsibility is until November, makes no sense. So you're giving them that raise for all those months, for what?
Well, I can't do a raise, right? As other people have said, other people have said that that's not mine to do, that's Board of Finance that would have to approve it. The motion should be read so that that contract takes effect. The employment contract starts in November, that's when the raise goes into effect, not July.
Well, that makes more sense, and I appreciate that, but, you know, a 3-year contract, I totally disagree with. I understand it's in line with what the board, you know, of Ed does for the superintendent, but this is different. This is employment at will, and I think we need to have a better say of who we put in this position. Or at least if you're gonna have someone in that position, to have 5 or 6 people on the Board of Selectmen or town council, that's all.
Thank you, Sarah. You know, on the email you have from Carl, there's that other sentence in there that says that don't expect this to be solved in one meeting. I truly didn't. I thought there would be good dialogue and stuff. I know. I'm just saying, I understand where you're coming from. We're not far away.
You know what I mean? That's where I agree with what someone else said.
Yeah, and
it should have been discussed, brought up,
right, and the way I
understand
it to work is that to get it discussed and brought up, I need to make a motion to get it out there to get the discussion started. That is why I did that process. It's the only reason I did that process. I brought the motion up. There was no discussion. We voted it passed.
Well, I know you're aware that we bring up stuff all the time on the Board of Ed for discussion, you know, the first appearance of it, and then we don't vote until the next time.
We'll talk after. Thank you. Brian?
Jim Barile, B-A-R-I-L-E.
Thank you for hearing my comments tonight. Before I make my comment, I have a question for Selectman Keeney. Selectman, how far in advance did you notify the rest of the board that you were going to be at the Hillsdale meeting?
Approximately 30 hours.
And were you ever informed that there was going to be an agenda item to discuss such an important thing to the town?
No information, no notice.
So it sounds to me like it's been intentionally withheld from you to have you go to this meeting, and they could have the vote without you. And again, a 2-to-1 vote, it still could have passed, but it just, on the surface, doesn't sound right. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm James Barile. I'm a taxpayer and near 30-year resident of the town of Somers. I'm employed by the Somers Board of Education. This week I filed a Freedom of Information complaint with the State of Connecticut Freedom of Information Commission on June 1st in regard to the issue before us tonight. I viewed the May 20th Somers Board of Selectmen meeting online, and I read the email transcripts between Selectman Patricus and Attorney Carl Landolina. These emails are dated May 12th, a full 8 days prior to the May 20th meeting. I feel that clearly demonstrates that Selectman Patricus had intent to bypass the 24-hour requirement of the Connecticut General Statute 1-225, paragraph C, thereby limiting the public's ability to be apprised of the true contents of the meeting or to be present at the meeting to express their opinions to the board. The issue before us, in my opinion, was deceitfully and unethically slipped into the agenda under the agenda item labeled Opportunity to Add Agenda Items. I think this is a dishonest and deceptive way to try to fundamentally alter the entire town government when it was clear that the board members knew that the full Board of Selectmen would not be present at this meeting and that the voters would not know about these motions ahead of the meeting as required under Connecticut law. This whole thing stinks, and it seems like a backroom deal to approve something that was previously unsuccessful. Of course, referring to when this was voted on by the townspeople a couple of years ago. You may remember there was a huge public outcry then when the voters complained that the question on the ballot was intentionally ambiguous and confusing. Now, some members of the board like to say this was approved by the voters before it was thrown out. Selectman Norr, you said that at the meeting that I viewed online. Selectman Patrikas, you said it tonight, but that doesn't change the fact that it was confusing. I can tell you from personal experience, as someone who was wholeheartedly against this change to the town government, it was not approved by all voters. I unintentionally voted for it. You know, I have a degree, I went to medical school, I saw the hubbub in the paper and I said, I don't need to read it. I came to the voting booth and I read the question over and over and over again. It was so unclear. It started off with some glittering generality, how positive it was, so of course you had to vote for it. So I unintentionally voted for it after rereading it all those times and eventually misinterpreted the extremely confusing wording on the question. So I don't think it was really approved by the town. They were tricked, many of them. So I think what you have tried to do in the past and are continuing to try to pass without the fully informed consent of the voters of Summers, it's outrageous. It's outrageous and it's plain wrong. Thank you.
I have Ralph Williams.
Ralph Williams, 42 Springfield Road, 40-year resident of Summers, since we're keeping track of all our years now. I was a member of the last Charter Commission, just for what it's worth. Strikes me there are two issues before us tonight. One's procedural, one's policy. Procedurally, I don't think you guys did it very well. I think you should have, you were thoroughly entitled to introduce it as you did under that item. I think you should have tabled it for further discussion at the next meeting. I understand we're looking at a July 1st effective date for the interim appointment. I still think you would have had time to do that. And I would not terribly mind if you reconsidered to do that, just to have at least a three-member vote. On the policy question, as I said, I was on the last Charter Commission, where we wanted, first of all, Pat, to have a 5-member Board of Selectmen, and we wanted to have a town administrative officer answering to the first selectman. The selectmen, in their wisdom or lack thereof, didn't like either of those ideas. They wanted effectively a town manager, although they were going to call it a town administrator. It would have been worded in such a way with a town manager, and they wanted to keep a 3-member Board of Selectmen. I remarked at the time, because we have pretty broad consensus within the commission, that an administrative officer answering to the first selectman was the way to go. I said, okay, we're a Charter Commission, we can only deal with this in these terms. It strikes me that you could do this with a job description. And in point of fact, the Board of Selectmen did do that approximately 6 or 7 years ago when they rewrote the administrative aide's job position to make it an operations manager, 85% of which would probably fall into the purview of what you now have as a COO. So I think it would be an excellent position. I have no problem with reducing the first selectman's salary, because one of my concerns is we have it built up right now. It's such a full-time job. I remember Lisa Pellegrini used to put in 60, even 70 hours a week doing it. That really, it has to be somebody who's willing to give up any other line of work, knowing full well they might lose the job in 2 years. And which means that really, apart from someone like Lisa, you're really going to be looking at someone who is either so rich or so old that they can afford to do that. I'm not saying such things. But for that reason, and because I would like to see the first selectman's job opened up to a broader swath of the community,
as head of a 5-member board, that I thought that was a wonderful idea, and dirty secret, folks, I still think it's a wonderful idea. And I think procedurally, I don't like the way you did it. Policy-wise, I think it's the way to go. What doesn't have a place in this discussion tonight is the round of despicable slander that has been pointing toward Mike Marinaccio, suggesting that somehow he was questioning his competence, his integrity, his ability to do the job. This is wrong. And there's a Republican Town Committee, which I would remind you, Mr. Keating, you're the chairman of.
Is that right?
Yes.
Excellent.
So you are, whether you're the author of it, you are certainly the spreader of it, courtesy of your mailings and your censure motion. I think this is horrible. It really suggests that after we've had 8 years, at least, of competent professional staff oversight of our finances and whatnot, that what at least one powerful faction in this town wants is to do away with competent government, to go back to an old boy network, basically government of the hacks, by the hacks, for the hacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Mike, Brian. Where am I? I think it says Peter Catholic or Catholic, I'm not sure. It's hard to read. K-A-F-L-I-K maybe?
Peter Catholic?
50 Old Farm Road. Go to the next row. Okay. Kathy Ashing.
Catherine Mashak, 54 Springfield Road. Catherine Mashak, 54 Springfield Road. I realize that the face of small town government has changed drastically in the last 20 to 30 years. I am all for making changes. I look at the town charter as the blueprint for how our government functions in town. When we do things without making the proper charter revisions, we're asking for a whole lot of trouble. When that was proposed, number one, I do remember now that the referendum was not worded properly, that anybody could understand. I also don't feel that the townspeople were properly educated on why we needed to do something different. And certainly at this point, that has not changed. I also feel that, and I've noticed other town meetings I've gone to, Robert's rules apply. You do not make a motion without discussion and pass it. And new business or other business is frequently put on the next agenda for discussion. So I suggest it's a little book, it's an easy read. I also question the position not being advertised. I think that both the operations officer and chief financial officer, these are two different positions that require two different skill sets. I don't necessarily see, unless it's wonder person, somebody that is going to do a good job at both. So this is something that needs to be considered. I feel that the job should have been advertised. And, you know, going back to something somebody said about the superintendent of schools, that was very well advertised. They had several applicants, and they chose who they thought was the best before a contract was signed. I also don't understand why, if this position is being overseen by the select board, that you need a contract. If the guy or the gal flubs up, you know, you write them up. 3 strikes, you're out. And that's what we need to do to protect ourselves in the town. So, anyway, I guess I said my piece.
Thank you, Kathy, appreciate it. Steve Getman.
Good evening. Thank you. Steve Getman, 19 School Street, and I serve on the Summers Water Pollution Control Authority and the Senior Advisory Committee. Gentlemen, I think this was totally mishandled. Selectman Patricus, if you've been working on this for a very long time, I see no reason why you shouldn't have had that publicized for further discussion, rather than just sneaking it in the middle of the night when one selectman was not there at other duties. I think it was deceitful, I think it was wrong, and I think it needs to be reversed. Thank you.
Barbara Boyle.
Sorry, I'm short. Okay.
Barbara, can you take that down just a little bit more?
I'm sorry. Now can you hear me? Okay. My name is Barbara Boyle. I live at 310 Hall Hill Road, and I've lived in Summers since 2004. I'm originally from the dirt farms of Bluegrass, Iowa, of 140 acres. Oh, sorry. Is this better? Yes. Okay. I'm originally, I moved here in 2004. My name's Barbara Boyle. I live at 310 Hall Hill Road. And I'm originally from 140 acres of dirt farms in Bluegrass, Iowa. We saw Bluegrass, Iowa go from a community who voted and got things passed, okay, to the good old boy system, okay, and it destroyed the town. I know you guys don't care about Bluegrass, Iowa, okay, but that's what I'm afraid of here, okay, and I think that all three selectmen, I think that anybody that works in the town hall and draws a paycheck needs to remember that they are being paid by the sweat of the taxpayers. Every year, our taxes go up. And it seems like we're not being appropriately represented, whether it's with the schools or the town government. I do understand what you said, that, and this is where I'm frustrated, okay? There were less than, what'd you say, 300 people?
Less than 300, yes.
That showed up for a budget passing. Okay, there's less than 300 people here. You know, I guess I'm just pointing that out. Okay, I'm just pointing that out. I do understand. I'm trying to be fair. Okay, trying to be a very fair person. Okay, I do understand that there's three selectmen, and that no matter whether Tim would have shown up or not, it still would have been 2 against 1. Okay, however, I do agree that it has the appearance of being the good old boy system and snuck under the rug. And I think that's where the issue really is. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. That was the last speaker that we had on the list. If anyone else would like to make a comment, ask a question, raise your hand. Come on.
Dean Hills, 115 Wood Road. Can everybody hear me?
Nope. Dean, they want you at the microphone, I guess. Thank you.
Dean Hills, 115 Wood Road. I have just a couple of comments. Tim, I think you know how I feel about you. You were a distant fourth in the last election, so if you've been planning this for years, perhaps people rejected it. But I'm very disappointed, whether you were part of this or just went along with it willingly. I'm really disappointed because I thought you were a good first selectman. It's very disheartening. With regards to Ralph, on your comment on Mr. Marinaccio, you're probably right, but if he's very in tune with what's going on here in Summers, he probably should have said something at the meeting, because he would know this wouldn't go over very big. So, that's my comments.
Thank you, Dean. We have another speaker coming up, Brian.
Hi, I'm Neil Abramson from 192 Scully Road. I've been sitting here tonight listening to everything, and I've certainly followed this along like everybody else has. And one of the things I've been doing here tonight is staring at that seal, that this town is nearly 300 years old. It's incorporated in 1734, okay? And this doesn't pass the sniff test of what this town was established on, or how it should be run. I'll be the first to tell you, being a selectman in this town or any town is a thankless job. It's a thankless job. Nobody's lining up here to say, wow, everything's great, okay? But that's not why you sign up to be selectman. You don't sign up to be selectman to get the accolades, to get the pats on the back, to hear everything is going great. You sign up to be selectman to leave this town better than you found it, okay? To set it up better for future generations, to caretake for it. You are a caretaker for this town for a period of time, whether it's the couple of years that you're elected for, or you run for re-election and you serve multiple terms. You are a caretaker, and a caretaker takes better care of it, okay, and leaves it in better shape than it was. You've commented tonight that, you know, we need the complexities of running a town require professional management, require professional people, that an elected person can't do that, okay, an elected first selectman. We have elected people in all levels of government. Should we be looking at all levels of government now and changing the way that we are governed, okay, by the people, for the people? That starts here at the local level, okay, where we have by the people, for the people. Okay, you talk about how we had only 300 people at the budget meeting, and I give at the budget vote, and I was number 266, okay, and I had it scheduled on my calendar to come that night, and I was very disappointed when I saw that I was number 266. Okay, so I'm right there with you, but you got to almost 300 because you sent out an alert to the townspeople using the town's emergency alert system. Okay, got people that wouldn't have shown up otherwise. Okay, I at least had it on my calendar to come at 7 o'clock. Okay, most people didn't. They got the emergency alert, and that got you to almost 300. Okay, you could have easily gotten a subset of this to show up to a town meeting if you said you were going to change the form of town government on it. If you sent out an alert, hey, tonight, this is what we're doing. Don't want to start the rumor mill, but come on down. Town hall, center of town. It's a good time. We don't have the popcorn machine, but hey, okay? You could have done that. That's what good leadership does, okay? Leadership does that. You know, Lee Iacocca said it, you know, best a long time ago. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. You guys aren't leading. You're not following. It's time to get out of the way. Okay. You have also said, okay, that, you know, we have established and we have a full-time finance, the gentleman, and I'm terrible with names, so excuse me, even though it's been said 100 times tonight, the gentleman's name that you want to make COO. You've also said that, you know, a first selectman is more than a full-time job. I get it, thankless job, more than a full-time job, not why you do it. So then how are we going to take these two jobs and make them into one person? Okay, putting aside the fact that you haven't even defined what that is. You're taking two jobs and asking one person to do it. You know, to sum up, you've said this is your seat. It's not your seat up there. That's the people's seat. That's the town of Summers seat. The town of Summers owns that seat. This is not right in our town. Not in our town. The town deserves better. The citizens of Summers deserve better. You know that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next time we'll have two mics.
Or footstool. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So I forgot, I had one more question, and, I'm curious, did the first selectman's position description change as of this time?
So that's what I want to work on after July 1st, is to separate governance from management so that we don't lose the ability of what's provided for under state statute, town charter, as the things that only an elected official can and should do to support the community. Take the administrative things off the desk and put those over to Mike.
So, you're saying after July 1st, you're gonna put a group together to talk about that, but I guess my next question would be, if it's not gonna be a full-time job, like, and it's gonna go to part-time, wouldn't that have to go to referendum anyway?
I don't know, okay. So, you know, one of the things I looked at too is like Vernon has a mayor that's part-time mayor, $30,000 a year. And I'm thinking in my head, if Vernon can run for 30 grand, can't we run Summers around that? That's really where that came from, right? It has to do with organizing duties. And you and I have talked about this before. I think I go through the corporate org chart, you rip out the titles, you decide what work needs to be done. How do you reorganize the work that needs to be done to get it most efficient? And that's what I'm trying to do here under the confines of government. And that's why I said we can talk later.
Yeah, and so.
It's not easy, right?
No, I understand
believe me,
that,
for
yeah.
all the comments I've heard, we're not far apart. There's not a lot of delta between where I'd like this to go and where I think the townspeople want it to go. So
I'm just trying to figure out.
To make that comment, you have not been listening to us.
That's right.
Okay, because I think most of the people in this room are far apart from your opinion on this, and that's why we're here.
There's a presentation I put here. The reason I set this up, I'm the guy that decided to set this Q&A up. It took me 9 hours to get it done last Thursday. I set it up because I wanted to hear what the townspeople thought of that proposal. That's why I did this. I'm not saying that I'm committed to everything. I wanted to see what you guys want.
Tim,
Sarah.
you're only 50% of the vote.
I know.
So there's another person that, obviously weighed heavily on this.
Yes.
And, that's my question to Bud, is who do you think we could find for $24,000 a year to fill your shoes, right? To fill the shoes of a first selectman. That's a big job to fill for $24,000 a year. How do we find a person that has any interest in doing that? They either have to be retired, or, I don't know.
Old or rich.
I think that was the qualification.
So, I'm just very concerned. Here we are, it's almost July, the elections are coming up. It's hard enough to find anybody to run, but now, how do we find someone to run? We don't know if it's a full-time position, a part-time position. What is it? I don't even know.
Good question. Gentleman in the second row, please.
My name is Roger Barbosa. I live at 136 Turnpike Road. And I guess my consensus of what I've heard here tonight is the majority of the people in this room are against this motion that got passed. So I'd like to understand from you or Mr. Noor, what are the next steps? Because I thought I heard you say that it passed, and it's done with, and yeah, maybe we'll go have a referendum or not. It still has to go to the finance committee, but I guess I'd like to understand in detail, what are the next steps from here?
As I understand them, it's a motion that got made, voted on, and passed. There would have to be another motion made, voted on, and passed to change what was done. That's how I understand it.
Could you repeat that, please? Sorry.
There was.
We'll overturn it.
All three there now.
There are 3 here.
Well, who's to say that's not gonna happen?
Why not? Oh, we know that.
Should we leave?
A motion would be made, voted on, and that's the process that we have for passing governance changes in
You
this
passed it
community.
with two, we got a whole room. Make the motion. Make the motion.
Make the motion.
Make it.
Right
I
now,
make the motion, overturn what you decided on May 20th.
Aye.
Why are you running the meeting? Why isn't the first selectman running the meeting? Who are you?
Yeah. Sounds like you're running.
It's all about you, it's I. That's all I've heard from you today.
Only because I set this up, so I felt I needed to come out here and answer questions, that's why I'm doing it. If you wanna do it, come up. We asked some people to moderate, nobody wanted to step into the role, okay? So, anyway, I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question, but as I understand it to be, we follow the same process that generated this one, which is a motion gets made, gets voted on, that's what would have to happen.
I'm gonna ask that the next time you do this motion, that you have all three members present. Okay, if Tim gave 30 hours notice that he wasn't gonna be at that meeting, then you guys should not have even voted.
Why did you do it behind closed doors?
Like everybody is saying here, it sounds really sneaky. I've been living in this town since 2009. I came from Metro Detroit. This sounds more like something that would happen in Metro Detroit than here in Summers.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Can you hear me?
Speak up.
Can you hear me? My name is Ann Levesque, at 230 Bridges Road. I lived in this town all my life. I lived in this town all my life, and I love it like everybody else does, okay? I think we need to make changes to the town government, because some of us here, and I believe we're the quiet minority, are not saying much because this room is full of the loud majority. But we deserve to be heard too, and that's why I'm here.
It's called a vote in.
Baloney. What is the problem? Can I speak?
Let her speak.
May I speak? Thank you. Well, I want to be heard though, and there are other people I think that
We want you heard.
At the same time, I'm afraid of the good old boys club in town. I'm really afraid of what's down the street from my house, because they can take over. And we have other issues in this community that need to be heard and dealt with. We cannot sweep these things under the rug as we've done for many, many years. And that's the reason I would like to see, okay, under referendum, a change to our government. They worked hard, they do their job, they get paid good money, but we're a growing community with growing problems. These need to be addressed. The good old boys club doesn't work, it just creates animosity. And that's why I had to speak. I wasn't planning on it, but I love this community. I want us to get along. And it's, when I hear loud people and others are so afraid to say their mind, this is not good. This is not America.
Thank you.
Mike Dow, 174 Bilton Road. I have not lived here as long as most of this room. So I have a couple procedural questions that everyone else in the room probably knows. First Selectman Knorr, how long have you held this office?
I've been on the board 12 years, and I've had this office for 4.5 years.
In that 4.5 years, what has changed that has made this job unsustainable?
It's not unsustainable. It just takes a lot of hard work, a lot of background information, a lot of experience, etc. And I think Paul Parrott, what Selectman Patricus is saying, Paul Parrott, what Selectman Patricus is saying is it's becoming more and more complex. That's all. My concern is I'm a retired executive. I don't need the money, so somebody said here, we should take this job for the love of the community, and that's what I've done. But fundamentally, what it gets down to is, my concern is, and that's the reason I supported this original motion, and by the way, I appreciate all these comments, because it's bringing to forefront the kind of things we should have done in the past. But having said that, what this has brought to my attention is that the job is very complex, it's becoming more complex. Town is changing, it requires an experienced executive that has some business background that can handle this. Now, that's not to say there's not other people, like myself, for example, I want to pat myself on the back, that's retired, that could do this. But the concern is, how do we maintain the consistency of that? That was the concern.
What is the process for putting stuff on the agenda for a normal meeting? Who is responsible for that?
I am responsible for putting on the agenda.
Why with a week's notice, why did you make the decision to put, motions for that under stuff to be added later and not on the agenda as new business?
We have, for the past 40 or so years, obviously had the situation where we can add agenda items. That's been done on a routine basis. Mr. Patricus advised me within a couple of days ahead of time, when he sent me those motions, that he was gonna make this motion. I said, fine, I don't interrupt whether or not he's gonna make a motion, or Selectman, Tim, Keeney's gonna make a motion, we accept that.
Right, but you said you had 1 week of notice prior to the meeting.
That's correct.
Why was that not added to the agenda as a new business item? Why was it left as a miscellaneous?
Because I was not aware he was gonna add that agenda item until right before the meeting.
Didn't he not send you an email saying he was going to make
No,
those
he
motions?
basically sent me the motions that he was gonna present. He didn't indicate to me exactly what.
Is that when people send you emails to add agenda items normally, do they just send them to you? I'm trying to feel out the process for why this was placed on the agenda well, actually it wasn't placed on the agenda. What the process normally would have been, how do people put stuff on the agenda normally?
We basically generate the agenda based upon the current series of events. For example, contracts, appointments of commission members, payment of, approval of payments, etc. And then we have this other item, which I've indicated, the ability to add agenda items that are not covered with the agenda that's already been published.
I'm not gonna get a good answer to that question, so I'm gonna drop it. Selectman Petrikis. Under the town charter, it refers to the first selectman as the chief administrative and operating officer for the town, correct? What part of taking those duties away from the first selectman would not require a charter change, in your opinion?
In my opinion, you can delegate the task, you cannot delegate the accountability. So, the first selectman is still accountable to the voters in this community to make sure the administrative procedures and regulations are followed. Doesn't mean they have to enforce them every day with the rest of the town staff. So, operational falls to the operation. I've got policies in my job that I do not ask 200 people around the country if they're following every day, but I'm ultimately responsible to see that they're carried out. Same thing.
Why, you say you didn't want to start rumors. Why did you not put the agenda under new business? Why did you decide that it needed to be kept as a miscellaneous item at the end of the business meeting? When you say that the purpose of this was to start a discussion, would not have the best way to start that discussion is to have an agenda meeting, even if it was as simple as hiring or creating new position for city or town governance?
Because my personal experience in this community, the last time I did that, rumors flew all over the place and I had to deal with it for a month about my own special interest and what I wanted to do. That's what it is.
So, but if the purpose of this was to start a discussion within the town, would it not have been procedurally, and the chair of the board could probably answer this as well, to make your motion, no discussion, which was the point of this, and then table the motion?
That's
Why?
certainly an option.
Why then wasn't voted on, and now it's set in stone, unless you guys decide to overturn it later in this meeting. When, as you say, your purpose was to start discussion, it was not to pass the motion to make this set in stone.
Well, listen, I thought it was a good idea. When the vote came up and the vote was yes, I voted yes. That's what happened.
I believe I used up my 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you.
We don't need that.
Rick? Oh, okay, we've got 2 more registered after Rick, so we'll go in that order. Go ahead, Rick.
Rick Cheney, 175 Highland New Drive. This is very difficult for me because I know all these gentlemen in one capacity or another. I said, this is a very difficult position for me because I know these gentlemen in one capacity or another. And what's happening at this point, first, I want to make this clear that this is not a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan issue. We had a Democrat and we had a Republican vote on this crap. And so this is not somebody, a gentleman over here got all upset about the Republican Party sending out the flyer. I thank the Republican Party for informing us that what's going on. The Democrat Party will be right in there with it because I'm sure that this is not just Republicans here and it's not just Democrats. I think this is taxpayers who are, we've had this issue being thrown at us now for over 2 years. And the first way was very deceitful. I think we've covered that extensively. This has been done very deceitfully. And it just, I can appreciate everybody's feeling on this. So, what does it take to right the wrong? Because obviously, we've got some gentlemen here that think they are doing right by this town in a patriotic manner, using their executive background to say that we're not smart enough as people, as town folks, to be able to elect our own government. That is the epitome of arrogance. All I have to say for that is, if we don't get this resolved and done in the right way tonight, there's something called recall.
You're fired.
Gonna tip the mic well, so everybody can hear me. I've been watching on YouTube at home for the last hour and 22 minutes, and I couldn't contain myself any longer. I had to come down here. My question is this. We are looking at a huge shift in the way that the government in this town is going to be addressed, or the executive side, or the operational side, or whatever we want to call it. Let's call it for what it is. We're looking at a big shift. I'm wondering why maybe the first step was not looking at a 30% increase in the CFO's salary to a COO, but maybe people would come out of the woodwork if we increased the first selectman's salary by 30%. I've been a teacher for 20 years just about, and by the way, I've got tremendous respect for the offices that you hold. I know Mr. Petrikis really well. I know Mr. Knorr really well. Just getting to know you, Mr. Keating. Good. And I know for me, as a public school teacher, I could not leave my position in good conscience to take the role of a first selectman and a pay cut, knowing that I might have a job cut in 2 years. There are a lot of people in that same position where perhaps they were offered a pay raise if they were elected. Now we've got a risk that we might be able to take. And so that's my question. Rather than a huge shift in government, why not look at something like that? Somewhere around 40 minutes ago, as I understand it, there was a motion that was put on the floor. I'm hoping that might be addressed in front of us all.
Thank you, Tim. We got, Diane Gorgantis.
Good evening. My name's Diane Gigantis, and I live at 7 Heritage Drive. I was also at home watching on YouTube and couldn't stand it any longer. I work in a municipality in Massachusetts, and honestly, when I moved to Somers 26 years ago, I didn't quite understand the role of the first selectman. In municipalities I lived in and worked in, we don't do this form of government, but over the years living in Somers, I have come to appreciate the role and the direct access the community has to how our town operates. That being said, I do believe the role of first selectman is quite involved, and I appreciate the level of expertise that is required to operate the town. As I said, I worked in a municipality. Now, if you want to change your vote, which I strongly urge you to do, it's called rescinding the vote. You can only do it at this meeting. You would have to move, he would have to second, and then you vote. Because you two are the only ones that voted in the affirmative. That's Robert's rules. I know this because I work and I operate with many elected officials. The motions were not on the agenda. That is a direct violation of FOIA. And the reason I say that is because FOIA says that when you went to go and move those motions, there was supposed to be a vote prior to you doing that, to ask for permission to do it. That never happened. I've looked at the meeting. You didn't do it. You didn't follow protocol. You need to rescind those votes. I'm not saying that Mr., and I'm going to butcher the poor man's name, the CFO is not a wonderful person, but the whole way this went about was totally wrong. And you need to rescind that vote and do it properly with a referendum and a vote of this town.
Yes.
I'd like to leave it open. If people are welcome to stay. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, I was being given a time signal. I want to just keep the room open, that's all.
I just want to let the record show 55 Mansfield Road. I am a resident of town.
Could I get your name one more time? What's your name one more time?
Tim Perkowski.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Brian, we have another speaker coming up? Not on the list.
Not on the list.
That's okay.
It's okay. Thank you. My name is Jeff Golden. I was not going to speak tonight, and I apologize. Wow, you thought I would learn my lesson back there. My name is Jeff Golden. I was not going to speak tonight, so I will say I'll apologize for my attire to be before everyone in sweatpants or sweatshirts and shorts. It sounds like everything I'm hearing tonight is that maybe the intent of what you wanted to do is okay, but the process just does not, as people are saying, pass the smell test. I was not going to speak, and I know there's a lot of people behind me that weren't going to speak. So I'm going to do an impromptu, if I may, just a survey of the audience. How many people behind me, by a raise of a hand, would like to see these gentlemen rescind their motion on May 20th? How many people, by show of hands, would like it to stand? Gentlemen, I think you have your answer. Thank you very much.
Just a little closer.
Okay, this is very serious. For $140,000
What's your
a year.
name and address?
Dick Thomas, 31 Sunset Drive, Somers. For $140,000 a year, plus benefits, 3-year contract, no job description, 4 or 5 days a week. I want that job.
One more gentleman coming up.
Sorry. Shannon Dow, 174 Belton Road. My concern is, if you can no longer do the duties that you were elected for, shouldn't you resign?
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Jim Formica, 48 Franklin Woods Drive. So we've heard a lot about the complexities of the job. Can you guys be a little more specific? We have a budget of what, $35 million? 25 million is wrapped up in the school, so it's a $10 million job. Pretty small potatoes in the big scheme of things. What's so complex?
And
Specifically.
from my perspective, it's the changing environment that we have to work in with increasing legislation and requirements from the state to fund those without any source to fund them. So working close enough with Mike to understand how some of this stuff works, being able to find those sources to fund the mandates that come down from the state, is getting more and more complex. We have more social issues that the town doesn't want to sometimes recognize or address. Now, I will say that Mr. Keeney's done an awesome job in the past couple of months getting people together to work on education toward mental health awareness. We all need to work on that. And from a consistency standpoint, the risk that we run is when there is a change of leadership, you can lose the momentum on things that are very important to the community, that the community is sometimes blinded by. As I was serving on the Board of Education, it was one thing after another about why this town doesn't need that, because we don't have those problems here. I think Tim would answer, we do have those problems here, and we need to do a better job addressing those and shepherding the resources that we can by neighboring with other towns and working collaboratively with leaders from other towns to get that done. But it takes a full-time effort by people who know how that thing works. I don't particularly have that skill set. I don't know how those things do. I'm not going to get it. You need somebody that works in municipal world to understand how that all goes together, and it gets worse every year.
And you get that by interviewing no one?
Well, we have the person that I recommended for the role has been doing that as best as he can for the town, and that's what I think he's
Bud
doing.
hasn't been doing that?
I think most of that's fallen to Mike to find those things.
And my other point is, you keep talking about the budget vote and how the vote was.
Yes.
Well, the referendum 2 years ago, there were 4,000 people that voted to get on or against that. So I mean, we don't just not vote all the time.
Right.
It was kind of a blasé, kind of a boring budget. There was nothing really exciting going on. People weren't that interested in it. Shame on them for not voting, but it is what it is. And finally, I think we should ask you directly, will you rescind your vote?
I'm open to any motions that hit the table this evening.
Will you make the job of an employee at will?
I am not going to make a motion to rescind my vote, no.
Will you make the job an employee at will?
Like I said, motion comes up, I'm happy to discuss it.
I ask you, will you vote?
I would need to consider it. As Sarah mentioned, I have a tendency to want details, so I need to know more about that.
How about you, Mr. Nord? Will you rescind your vote?
We'll make the motion, we'll have the discussion.
That's not an answer, sir.
You have to make the motion first.
Thank you. Please let us run our meeting. We have an agenda. On the agenda, there is that thing that says opportunity to advertise. The same process we followed 2 weeks ago.
I'm sorry for you that you have to worry about how you govern because you're worried about rumors. That's sad.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? My name is Erica Teasing. I live at 32 Eaglebrook Drive. I also was not going to speak tonight, so forgive me if I ramble. First, I need to say, forgive me for being, if I seem disrespectful, but the arrogance from you, Mr. Patricus, is really disturbing. I have to say, I've never been to a town meeting. I have 3 little girls. I'm all over the place, and so I apologize for not really being part of this, but I can't believe that this is our town. This is not what we should be voting for. And speaking of that, we should be voting. Whatever changes we make in our government, you make in our government, should be made by us, not by you, and not by you, by yourselves. They should be made by the voters. And so I think this simply comes down to, it's our decision what we do with our town government. So where does it stop? Because you keep talking about social issues and problems in the town, which I'm sure we have. However, when is the vote not going to happen? Are you not going to vote on how we spend our money? Are you not going to vote on what you do with our budget? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, did you want to come back up? Oh, sorry.
My name is George Irish. I've lived in this town for 86 years. I was baptized and I'll tell you.
George, step up to the mic.
Okay, you can't hear me, I'll.
They need you to tip the mic up toward your mouth. Sorry.
Yeah. I can remember when the town hall was where the mobile gas station was. and the only thing I've got to say is what you guys propose may be right, but the way you did it, I wouldn't buy a used car from either one of you.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Catherine Downey of Brianna, and I'm here to ask a question of Tim Keeney. If we don't have our voices heard tonight to rescind, Mr. Keeney, what options do we have? As the public tonight has discerned with our own intelligence here that we do not like what you did. This is the second shameful thing in the paper in the last couple of years that has been done, and we now have the opportunity to use our voice to say, no more. You will waken the sleeping giant here. And Tim, I have to say, you did it well. But I'm concerned about you, Tim. What would you recommend for the people tonight to sleep with a sleep test, knowing that when they go to bed, the right thing was done tonight, not the wrong thing? How do we stop this process from going forward, and what can you do about it?
Thank you for that question. First of all, there will be a motion to reconsider the motions of last Thursday, the 20th of May. I will make that motion.
Yes.
Being an attorney, I happen to believe that there are direct violations of the charter with these new motions being put in place. So I feel that there is plenty of evidence to support a citizen's lawsuit to prevent this from going forward.
Okay. My second question is this. The damage has been done. What do you as a board think that you can do to regain some of the trust you've lost by, first of all, the bonus situation, and secondly, with your agenda, the way it was spun deliberately, I believe. So, Can you answer that question?
Sure, the first step was assembling this. When Bill and I were talking Sunday night, I don't see where Bill went. There he is, he's back. When Bill and I were talking Sunday, we said, if we could get a community conversation going, that's certainly the first step in the right direction. I expected that Mr. Keeney would be prepared with a motion this evening so we can get it on the table and discuss it with the things that we've learned tonight. So, I didn't come here expecting to change anyone's mind tonight. I really didn't. And I'm sorry that I come across as arrogant. I know that of my own personality, but I do a lot of research, and it's really hard to get me off the dime after I make a decision, and that shows. I'm aware of that, and I apologize, but it's a character trait that my poor wife had to live with for 35 years, and maybe another week or two. What do you think? So I apologize for the way that comes across. I know it's a character trait, but I do listen, and I'm sure Mr. Keeney is going to be able to make a very compelling counterpoint to what was presented 2 weeks ago. I will listen. I'm hard to move, so I'm not going to make a promise, but I'm listening. And that was today's first step, okay?
Okay, the other thing I have to say is, this seems to be more about control. Control of what you two want for the rest of us to do, not about anything else. And I detest the way you're putting it forward. And I just want that on record. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. While Tim makes his way to the microphone, we are at 2 hours. I'm sticking around, so if you got something to say, raise your hand. We'll keep going.
Tim Perkowski, 55 Mansell Road. In the spirit of having a hard time moving you off your dime, Mr. Patricus, I've actually rethought my idea from a few minutes ago of increasing the salary of the first selectman. But I would also propose that the Charter Revision Committee, when they reconvene, increase the salary and the term to 3 years, so we don't see a change in leadership quite so often. Thank you.
You're going to end up on the top of that committee list, Tim.
Sorry?
You're going to end up on the top of that committee list.
Please call me when the time comes.
Thank you. One more comment? Yes, sir.
George Schober, 98 Rocky Dundee Road. I guess the first question I have is what does the lack of voters at the budget referendum have to do with hiring a chief operating officer? How is that connected?
There is no connection.
Okay, so I'm just curious why that's in the same conversation.
Because as I see the needs for the town changing, we spent $3,000 to get 300 people to come out and vote for a referendum. Is there a better way to get that done? It's a question, it's not a statement.
Okay, so it has absolutely nothing to do with the COO?
No.
Okay. Now, did I hear tonight that one of the reasons for a COO was to give the citizens of the town better service?
Yes.
And are the citizens of the town not getting good service from this Board of Selectmen and from the First Selectman?
That's probably in a video somewhere. If you go back, that's been a concern of mine for a couple of years, that when the residents call and want support from us, I can't really call Bud and say, can we do something for this resident? Can't do that, right? So I gotta wait till the next Thursday meeting to do that.
Well, when I have a problem, I go to Bud. I call Bud, I show up at Bud's office, whether he wants me there or not, and I email Bud. I don't have a problem. Who has a problem? How does a COO solve a problem with someone not approaching the First Selectman?
So the issue is that, let's say someone has a personality disagreement with our First Selectman, they reach out to me instead.
I have a huge personality disagreement with our First Selectman.
I know, but you're
and that doesn't stop me from going to his office. Does it, Bud?
We'll do another show of hands. Who's surprised? But honestly, so if a resident reaches out to me, if I want to go to somebody at town staff, they don't technically report to me as a Board of Selectmen member. They report to someone else, usually in the form of Bud. the goal of having a COO in the interim is that as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I could call the COO without disrupting that chain of command and say, hey, can you set up a meeting for me and you and this person at Town Hall so we can help get this resident's problems addressed? I can't do that.
Wait a minute, why can't you do that with Bud?
Because I would need to warn that as a special meeting, I can't call Bud.
How is that different from sending the minutes or your motion or the motions? How is that different than what you just did?
I delivered those motions so that he would have access to them. We did not discuss anything about them.
So then we felt like the right.
There you go.
But again, why wasn't Mr. Keeney notified of that same email, so he knew there were motions that could possibly be brought up at that meeting?
It was not an email. I dropped it off the Town Hall for him.
Are you saying
So
legally?
why didn't you nor send it to Mr. Keeney, so
I
he
don't
knew
know.
that was gonna happen?
Tim,
Well,
Tim, are you
same
saying
thing.
legally you cannot talk to Bud at
Let the
all?
speaker up, let the speaker answer.
That's okay.
Is that what you're saying? You can't go into his office and talk to him about anything about town?
Not about town business, no.
Why? You're a selectman.
Because that's a quorum, and I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican. If we were both on the same ticket, we could have a quorum, but as a Democrat talking to a Republican, I can't.
So it's against the law, you tell me.
Correct.
Give me a call.
Okay.
All right, generally, if a town manager is hired, and I'm equating the COO to a town manager based on what little information has been provided, there's a search committee. And generally, a town manager has a specific skill set, usually often a master's in public administration, has some experience in the business world, not just in a finance position, but in a management position. I was just amazed that this was just handed to somebody with no search committee whatsoever. Do you care to comment about that?
Because with the pool of resource money I had in the salary lines that I was working with, I felt Mike had the capabilities to do this, with the background from his performance reviews and the recommendation from the Board of Finance to do the majority of what I expect that work to be.
So my understanding, if it's 130%, my understanding is he makes $107,000 now. So 130% of that is somewhere in the vicinity of $140,000. Is it your opinion that you could not put together a search committee to get that type of person for the town of Somers for $140,000 with a guaranteed 3-year contract? Which, by the way, is another issue I'll talk about. But yeah. Is that your position, that you could not get a good qualified candidate besides Mike Marinaccio for $140,000 for the town of Somers?
No, the question was additive versus non-additive. I couldn't afford to keep Mike and add a $140,000 person. It's just not enough money, okay? So, I didn't commit to a 30% increase, I said not to exceed.
Right.
But I don't wanna weigh that until we get the other elements in place. Good question, I just couldn't afford both.
All right, now, one of the worst things in the world are 3-year contracts for superintendents. It makes them arrogant. It makes them easy to sue because of that arrogance. And as someone who sued different superintendents for clients, it's lucrative. But we don't need that. I'm not aware of any town manager that has a 3-year contract that renews automatically. So would you at least, I mean, it's obvious you're not going to reconsider what you've done, but would you at least reconsider committing this town to 3 years? What you've said to the next Board of Selectmen that gets elected in November is you're stuck with this guy for longer than you're in office after you're elected this coming November. That's outrageous. At least with the Board of Ed, they're on for what, 6-year terms, staggered? Here it's 2-year terms. This guy outlasts the Board of Ed. They have no say. You've handcuffed them.
I think that your question was, would I consider?
Right.
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Maybe that was the plan.
Now, there's been talk about the fact that for 90,000, I don't think it matters whether it's 90,000 or 150,000, anyone who can run for first selectman, leaving another job for a 2-year term, I'm not sure that 90,000 or 150 makes a difference. But certainly, there's a difference between 90 and 24, and you're going to limit the potential pool of candidates at 24,000. Because someone who's considering for 90 is probably not going to consider for 24. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
So, do you feel that the new first selectman's position, once you figure out what it is, that you can get a qualified candidate for $24,000?
Well, I'd like to think so. Again, I'm basing it on what I saw in Vernon, right, with the $30,000 mayor, okay? But I also was working within the budget constraints that I displayed on the earlier slide. Now, if the Board of Finance decided that this was a good idea and we had a way to fund it in an additional $50,000 or $60,000, it wouldn't stand in the way of that. But I floated the proposal saying, let's not make it more expensive than we're already spending money on.
So, I guess what I'm having trouble understanding is 2 people have made this momentous decision. Now, the first thing that I saw in the paper was that Bud became aware of this. It made it sound like it was minutes before the meeting. But now I'm hearing it was a week before. Were you misquoted, Bud, or did you inform the newspaper reporter that it was just before the meeting?
It was about a week before the meeting.
What did you tell the newspaper reporter?
I basically was advised by Mr. Putrikis of the motions, and I said it was within a week. That's, I recall what I said.
So, from where I'm sitting, Bud, this is the 3rd or 4th major screw-up in the last couple of years on your part. And I'm thankful that there's only less than 6 months until you're out of here. And here's a couple of the screw-ups. First, you said you're a retired business executive and you don't need the money.
Can we keep this to the motions? We're running late. There's other people that may want to talk.
Let him see what he wants to say.
I just asked him.
He's making a lot of sense. I like to hear what he has to say.
Gonna take the heat?
So, first we had the raises. Well, that wasn't first, but we had an illegal search of a property, and now you're being sued in federal court, costing us money. Your legacy, and then this, your legacy is going to be legal bills. And it appears we may have more legal bills from this. Do you have anything to say to that?
No.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you, George.
Spend our money.
Hi, I'm Tim Simons, I'm from Michelle Drive. When this was brought up at the last meeting, how long of a discussion was held on the aspects of this motion?
A few minutes, most.
Is it worthwhile to make a major change in town government based on a few moments of discussion between 2 people?
I think that's what Mr. Keeney's going to raise as a motion. We'll talk about that.
Okay, very good. And it also hits me as we're kind of developing the airplane while we're flying it. You know, we're up here without any idea what the job description is, who's the right person for the job. You know, I think to just pick someone that because you know them is not really a great reason, because there could be a large pool of candidates that are more qualified. Sure, he may be qualified, but he may not be the best qualified. So I think we just have to relook at this. Maybe it's a great idea, and I appreciate the jobs that you guys have to do are very complex. And it's very important that the person we do get in the job isn't just someone we know and we think he can do it. We make sure that it is the right person for the position.
Thank you.
So what was your name, I'm sorry?
Okay. Michelle Drive.
All right, well, I believe we're going to move on to the other agenda items. Stick around. I want to just say thank you for everybody's courage to come forth and speak. I know how impassioned the community is on this. I'm not going to do a closing statement. I just want to say thank you for coming out, being active, being courageous in front of friends, neighbors, colleagues. We do know each other, and I appreciate the candor in the dialogue. Thank you.
Hey, Tim, are you guys gonna be able to make a motion to,
We
agenda?
we have,
That you can do this motion first? Yes. So we can hear it? Because I know you think it's that.
I guess, where's the Roberts Rule lady?
You can do that.
We can move it up. Okay, good.
Make a motion to,
I'm going to then make a motion that we move the opportunity to add agenda items up to the next item.
I second that motion.
Vote. Any discussion? So I hear some people asking, so the motion's been made, did you second?
I second the motion.
Okay, so the motion's been seconded, so now we can have an open discussion. And the discussion is that we wanted to move a line item that's on the agenda as item number 7 up to the next item, which is after the community Q&A, so that we can have a discussion on any motions that might want to be added to this agenda this evening. So now, Tim, any further discussion before we take a vote?
No further discussion.
By moving the item up in front of the scheduled papers, okay?
Call for a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
I said aye.
No, we voted. Do you want to add a motion?
Fine. Yes. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the process that occurred in the 4 motions. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the process with regards to the 4 amendments introduced and passed at the Selectmen's meeting on May 20th, involving the...
Tim, I'm sorry, the lady from Roberts said we need to make a motion to add a motion, I think. So I want to make sure.
I thought we just did that.
We moved the item up to add, but we didn't take a motion to add an item.
I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the agenda.
I'll second your motion.
Additional discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
I just don't want to make a kerfluffle worse.
amend that
Aye.
motion to, spell out what item you're putting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion I would like to make is to reconsider the process and to rescind the 4 motions that passed by the Board of Selectmen on May 20th. Those motions were 1, to eliminate the position of Chief Financial Officer, retain the charter requirements of the Board of Selectmen, and appoint a treasurer and establish a chief operating officer with a new job description, compensation, guidance, and employment agreement. 2, appoint Mr. Michael Marinaccio as the COO, effective July 1, with a transition to occur prior to the next election. 3, modify the salary of the first selectman to an annual stipend to $24,000. And 4, recommend the creation of an ordinance prohibiting the first selectman or board of selectmen from raising their compensation during their term of office.
I second that motion. Additional discussion?
Yes, my discussion is that I think it's clear from the comments you've heard tonight that the process that occurred was inappropriate. I think the motions on their face violate the town charter. I think that the legal response you got from the town attorney was very limited. It was the only question asked was, do these motions on their face violate the charter? The problem is, you don't know what the motions mean. You don't know what the job is of the chief operating officer. You don't know whether the job of chief administrative officer, which by charter is the first selectman's job, is now going to be carried out by the chief operations officer. We've heard from you, Attorney Selectman Patricus, that the assumption here is that administrative duties are gonna be given to the Chief Operations Officer. I believe that, First Selectman Nora was quoted in the JI as saying the Chief Operations Officer's job is to be the Chief Administrative Officer of the town. That was the quote in the paper. It's clear that this is a direct violation of the charter, which again states the First Selectman shall be the Chief Executive and Administrative Officer of the town. Also, I believe that the elimination of the Chief Financial Officer, which is mentioned, the job is mentioned under the treasurer's position in the charter. It's mentioned in that section. You can't eliminate a position that's in the charter. That's a violation of the charter. So my thinking is the best procedure, the best approach here is to create a charter revision commission by the next Board of Selectmen that's elected in November, and let that charter revision commission consider this as one of many proposals to change the charter for Summers. And furthermore, my concern is that there will be a lawsuit challenging this action if it's not rescinded, and that's going to cost the town tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, and is likely to lose. And that's my motion. Thank you.
Well, that's your discussion after the motion was seconded, correct?
Correct, that's my discussion.
Further
Okay.
discussion for you?
Comments?
So, I see it differently, Tim. I know you're not gonna be surprised by that. I see the administrative tasks being able to be delegated, but not the responsibility as being a separation of those duties. I think the charter would be silent on what it means to say that they're the administrative officer. They can still be accountable as the elected official to the voters to ensure that the administrative policies and procedures are followed without actually be at staff meetings every Monday morning, for example. The CFO title is mentioned that the charter, my read of the charter, okay? My read of the charter says that there shall be a treasurer who shall act as Chief Financial Officer. Doesn't say that we have to have a position of Chief Financial Officer. It says we need a position of treasurer. And when I wrote and presented the motion, I was careful to ensure that we weren't stripping the role of treasurer out from the charter, and that those duties could fall to the CFO or the CFO that says in the charter, or the CEO as a job description. So at its heart, what we're creating is a job description for a role for someone to do those administrative and managerial tasks without removing from the public the ability to elect their Board of Selectmen and hold them accountable for those statutorily required and charter provided for elements of that role. I do have a question, if we could, if we need to tear this thing apart, if we address them one at a time and not four, but your original motion is to do all four, so we'll probably need more discussion, or we can modify the motion, so whatever you prefer.
The clarification is that, in the charter, the first selectman, whether it's full-time or part-time, will still remain as the chief executive officer. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
So we're talking about an administrative position.
But the charter states, I quote, excuse me, let's see. Section 4-2, the first selectman shall be the chief executive and administrative officer of the town. So how can you give the administrative jobs to someone else when it's the first selectman's responsibility? And the plan here, by the way, is for the current first selectman to delegate those responsibilities to the COO before he leaves. Again, handcuffing the next incoming Board of Selectmen.
on that one, I've said my perspective, so.
So I guess the question is, can you separate in the charter the position of administrative officer, if you will, versus the chief executive officer of the first selectman?
Well, again,
Charter change.
I am an attorney, and I believe that you violate the charter for two reasons. You violate it because you've got the COO doing the job of administrative officer, and you're eliminating the chief financial officer, which is a position in the charter.
But we see it differently.
But I talked to a lawyer, because I talked to the town attorney before I came here tonight.
All right, then I guess I would like to ask that of the town attorney also, so if you're okay tabling this, we can continue the discussion.
We're all here. You wanna hear what? Do it now.
Tim, I think that, again, I am an attorney, and I got some pretty clear indication from the town attorney that my position is absolutely spot on correct.
Can you share that with me?
Yes.
From him, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, unlike you, I asked the town attorney, very specific questions. First question was, hey, we're eliminating the chief financial officer position. How can you do that when it's in the charter? He said, gee, I don't know. I asked him, how can the chief operating officer handle the duties, the daily duties of town government, without the first selectman carrying out those duties? So you can't, and not violate the charter. So, I mean, I think it's a clear violation, and I would recommend rescinding all of the motions passed by the board last Thursday, the 20th of May.
Start over.
Right now.
Start over. Regroup. Throw the paper away.
How do you eliminate an elected position?
Cut it out.
Any additional comments, Tim?
From me, no.
Okay.
So, Tim, will you restate the motion that you would like us to vote on, please? Did you get it, Ken?
Yes, the motion is to rescind the motions that were passed last Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, the 20th of May. And I restated what those motions were. I can do it again if you'd like to hear.
No, I just wanted to make sure I understood what I was voting on.
Start over. Charter Commission was in motion.
And I might also add that, again, appointing someone to the position of chief operating officer in a 3-year contract is also not authorized by the charter.
Is it prohibited by the charter?
It's not authorized, so I don't see how you can do it.
It's obviously not clear in the charter in terms of this explanation. I guess that's why I'm confused. In terms of separation of the administration portion and the chief executive portion. You're saying Carl in effect says it's in violation?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do you have that from Carl so I could see it? I'm sorry, but that's...
like you, I just asked him the question.
Well, I emailed him the question.
Okay, well, again, I'm just telling you what the discussion I had with Carl and my personal legal view that this indeed is a direct violation of the charter. Okay. I mean, how can you argue? I mean, Bud himself said in the paper, the chief operating officer shall have the duties of the administrative officer. And that's a direct violation of the charter. I mean, on its face. It's clear. There's nothing ambiguous about it. And that's clearly what's intended here. And that's why you've reduced the salary of the first selectman by 3/4. Expecting this person just to come in and, I'm not sure what the new first selectman's job is gonna be, but it's sure as heck not gonna be the administrative officer of the town, which is what the charter says it must be. It says, charter, the first selectman shall be, those are mandatory words, the chief executive and administrative officer of the town.
And I don't, honestly, I don't see how this changes that stipulation.
Well, again, that's your point of view.
Yeah.
That's your point of view, and you can hold that, but I can tell you that you are wrong.
Ron, you might wanna move off your dime. Yeah.
Let's vote.
Open your mind a little, Cindy.
Impeach.
I'd like to make a few comments. I think our intention was to do the right thing for the town. Obviously, the procedure was somewhat flawed. I first admit that.
Speak up, man.
Obviously, the procedure was somewhat flawed. I admit that. I appreciate the comments made by the citizenship here in terms of their concern. And that's the reason we're here, in terms of responding to your needs. Now, I don't know if we're prepared to take a vote, Tim, or you want to have additional discussion?
No, I mean, the folks in this room want to vote. I don't think anybody's gonna be surprised what my vote's gonna be, so you can call for a vote if you like.
Okay, call for the vote.
Unless, Tim, do you have more comments?
I think I've pretty clearly stated my comments, and any vote in support of the motions that were made last Board of Selectmen meeting, again, is a violation of the charter.
Shall we vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion passes unanimously. I would like to get some additional clarification from Carl.
Did it pass unanimously?
Yes, passed unanimous, and I appreciate your comments, Tim, and your perspective.
Could you restate the motion that was just
Can you clarify that for everyone here, just to make sure it's has this thing from the 20th now been changed?
Let me see if I got it right, so I'm sorry, but I'll just go first. I think what we just did was vote to rescind the 4 motions from May 20th.
Good!
Now, I would like to let this body of residents know that the intent here was to create an environment that makes for more access to government. Give me one more minute. On the agenda in 2 weeks, I will ask Bud to put on the agenda further discussion about how we can better serve the residents of Summers with an easier way to access the people that can help them get things done. So that'll be on the agenda. But thank you for your input, because it was valuable this evening. Thank you.
I've got one comment before everybody goes. I want to thank these gentlemen for a tough meeting, and also listening to the will of the people of Summers. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen.
That's what this is for, Bob. Thank you. And please get involved. If you don't like the way this came down, get involved. We are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, gentlemen.
Thank you. Cheers. folks, I appreciate everybody's comments, but we do have 3 or 4 more items to go through, so if you could take these conversations outside, we're gonna stay here. Next item.
Next item is approval of scheduled payments.
I don't think you need those anymore. We have the,
Yeah.
that's what's important.
I'd like, okay.
Cut those off.
I'd like to make a motion that, we approve these scheduled payments totaling, payment authorization for, $113,116.87.
Can I just oppose to be a pain in the ass? I'll second. Go for it.
I do have one item I'd like to make. This, of course, is not being, this is still being video
This is
filmed.
still video and
Okay,
yes,
the microphone
can still hear you.
So, my concern deals with, make sure I got that right. The F&G recycling item here for $15,857.66. Well, the reason I'm concerned is because I don't think people in this town understand the fact that the town does not make money on recycling. I mean, they think we do. I mean, they think, and I'm just.
I don't agree with that because we made public statements regarding the potential loss of the transfer station. Now close to $200,000. So we do a better job communicating that. People understand the trash costs money. In fact, the next
I'm talking about recycling, not the.
That's all part of it in terms of the budget.
Well, the assumption is that somehow recycling has a positive return to the town, and that's the discussion I wanted to have.
Yeah, and I don't
think people understand that it doesn't.
No, it's funny because when that comes up in the budget discussions, we always talk about the transfer station losing money. It doesn't lose money any more than the fire department does. It's an expense that we have to run the town, but if there's a better way, we did the flyer, we put that flyer together last year on recycling. Should we consider redoing that for the next batch of permits to go out? Maybe next year, so I think we'll have time this year, to let the public know what they're getting for that service.
That might be helpful. It's just a matter of again, educating people to that recycling, even though we get money for selling these items, is costing us more money than that to collect it to begin with. I mean, that's right. Brian will explain that.
I just told him to lock the door, I'm sorry.
Okay, but I mean, I think that we.
When Todd sends his report out, he breaks out the recycling cost versus the cost of transport.
Yeah, have you seen that on Todd's report?
Yeah,
there's also.
That result that's positive. Because the total impact in terms of the transfer station.
Oh, the point is, it's $15,857.66 we're paying to the recycler.
That's probably the cartage.
The only thing we make money on is cardboard. The rest of it we have to pay for.
Anyways, it's very confusing and unclear to people that use the transfer station.
What would you like to do?
Well, it would be. Well, I was hoping that this discussion would be videotaped and we'd get it.
It is.
Okay.
And the microphone's on.
And then Brian would explain all the expenses.
Just to get
I mean, he's the guy that has the figures. I know that recycling, I think, brings in about $28,000 a year, but it costs something like,
Just one second, I'm going to see if I can do
Yell fire.
Brian Wessinger from the Clean Up to the Front Table. Brian Wessinger.
That would be great. I appreciate that. He's the guy to ask.
Hey, Craig, how you doing?
Craig Jones, so nobody knows.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can stay if you're quiet.
Well, you can stay.
They can stay if they're quiet. Stay if they're quiet. I'm trying to mess with government here. Come on.
You know, I realize that, U.S. Waste and Recycling charges the town about $500,000 a year to, pick up trash at people's houses.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
that's,
they do,
you're right.
right,
It's
right,
retarded,
right. I
yeah,
always forget
yep.
about that, 'cause
No,
we end up
'cause
paying
that's
for it.
right, 'cause I had an argument with USA Hauling a couple of years ago,
So
'cause
the
my bill
person
went
that
up,
actually
it was
writes
more
the check,
expensive. I don't think so.
the person that writes the check to USA Hauling is really paying for it twice.
We are.
They're having
absolutely.
USA Hauling pick it up, so it saves them from hauling their own garbage and recycling products to the
I think the
transfer
whole
station.
aspect in terms of trash recycling is gonna, has to change. Okay? And people don't wanna pay for their own recycling, they don't wanna pay for their own.
Right, but I had that conversation when my bill went up last year, that they said it's the tipping fees. I said, no, the town's paying the tipping fees. So you're right, Tim, we should, I don't know if the Summers Connection is a good place to talk about the cost of.
I've been wanting to talk
waste.
about trash for the longest
That could be,
time.
I mean, that
No,
would be a good way to do it, better than the flyer that
Yeah,
they see when they go to the
absolutely.
transfer station.
Brian?
When's the next one going out?
Brian,
Well, actually, I'm trying to get one out to go out next
could
week.
you just explain the expenses of recycling and, I mean, this particular item, we're spending $15,857.
That is the cost, F&G is our curbside
Pickup.
haul away company. So that is the cost of people who have trash and recycling at the curb, to haul it to either our transfer station or to another location. I'm not sure which one happens.
Yeah, I think
But
it goes
that's-
to another location.
But that's our cost. So we
yeah.
pay to remove waste from the town, whether it's curbside or whether it's at the transfer station. Either way, the town still pays the cost. So the homeowner pays the cost to have that service, but we still pay as the town, we still pay for the actual cost of hauling the waste.
I think Mr. Keeney's point is that as a resident who pays for that service, we think that that's covering the cost of transportation and
Right.
disposal, and it's not.
You're
So how do we clear that?
you're paying the company for the service. You're not paying for anything beyond that. You're paying in taxes. You're paying for the cost of hauling it away.
Right, but what income is received from the recycling items?
Any income we receive from recycling is cardboard and recyclable materials that are brought to the transfer station. We charge a fee. I don't know exactly what the fee is based on.
We don't charge
what
for
the item is.
we don't charge for cardboard.
We don't charge for cardboard, and we actually get money from,
In the contract that we get money for the cardboard, it's a premium recyclable.
Right.
It's the only thing they'll give us money for.
Right. Everything else, we take in recyclables, plastics and so forth, and we charge the resident when they bring that in, we charge for that, but then we also pay to remove it from the transfer station and take it elsewhere.
Right, and they're also taken out of the waste stream because they're recycled.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But I think
There's a benefit to that.
That's gonna change.
As far as the
because
environment goes.
The last contract.
Environmentally, yes.
That's gonna change, because the last contract we negotiated with USA Hauling, we basically insisted they take the cardboard back as part of that. That's gonna change, because China's not taking these cardboard, so in
Right,
fact.
they haven't been doing that for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna cost us.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you guys?
We have a motion and a
Okay.
second, we didn't vote, there's still discussion. Any other
I
questions?
see. I also, just asked the question about Fuss and O'Neill. The answer to that was,
That's for
That's
test
for-
well monitoring at the transfer station. That's
Okay,
a legal requirement.
A legal, not an illegal
And-
requirement. That is a
And
legal requirement.
That's a legal.
you also have money going to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public, what?
Public protection,
Protection.
DESPP. That's, the state of Connecticut, for state police, they charge us for like the overtime and so forth. I'm not sure exactly which bill that is.
It's $2,740.
Yeah, so that was probably, working, or, either overtime, or that would have been for background checks, or for, fingerprinting services or something.
Which
of
we're
that
doing a
nature.
lot of lately, so.
Firearms issuing
Yeah.
permits.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Those are my only questions.
I'm good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes. They're attached to the agenda.
Yes, yeah,
Sorry.
yep. I will make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted from Thursday, May 20th, and would like to publicly thank the community for their participation in tonight's discussion on those motions.
I second that.
And I'll abstain from the vote since I wasn't at the meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, minutes passed, and more signs.
This one. Oh, yeah, awesome. You gotta shut the thing off though. That's the button.
Here you go, Kim.
Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, second, all in favor, aye. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kim.
No problem. Glad I could help.
No, that was exactly what we needed to do.
I'm tired. I gotta go to bed. My eyes twitching, dude. I'm telling you, I'm not used to this stressful stuff.
That was not an easy meeting.
I think there's a way to achieve it, and I agree with a lot of what the residents were saying, that the process